Hello and welcome to the Listener's Nest. Thank you so much, dear listeners, for all your love and warm appreciation for the 3 parts of The Little Mermaid. We're so glad you enjoyed them, and we've therefore combined all 3 parts into a single complete story for your listening pleasure, with no breaks and no waiting for the next part. As you enjoy the complete version, why not try and listen carefully for any new words you find? We are particularly interested in descriptive words such as beautiful, lustrous, trusted, loyal, etc. These describe the characters and events in the story. Try and find 3 such words in the entire story and write a sentence using each of these words in the comments in the next 3 days. Sounds good? Awesome! And now sit back, relax, and let the magical voice of the lovely Zia Contractor transport you into the enchanting world of the Little Mermaid.
The Little Mermaid, Part 1. Once upon a time, deep under the sparkling blue sea, lived a mermaid princess with the most beautiful voice anyone had ever heard. Her name was Oceana, and she was the most favorite mermaid princess in the Sea Kingdom. Her skin was soft and radiant, her hair long and lustrous, and her eyes were as blue as the deep sea. She had no legs, as she was a mermaid. Instead, she had a beautiful fishtail, like all mermaids do. Mermaids are basically half fish and half human, gentle creatures that live deep in the sea, in a kingdom of their own. Oceana lived in a beautiful kingdom too, with her father, her 4 elder sisters, and her grandmother. She had many friends, and Scuttle the crab in particular was her most trusted teacher and friend. Oceana would play all day in her water palace with her friends and sisters, and in the evenings they would all gather around her grandmother, who would tell them all about the mysterious world of humans who lived above the surface of the sea. The human world is very different from ours, Grandmother would tell them. They have no fishtail, but instead a pair of legs with which they can stand, walk, dance, and run on land. Humans have built wonderful things with their hands and machines, which make their life much easier. But they can also be selfish and dangerous, little care and concern for the natural environment. Look how much they have polluted our sea, all their dirt and waste seeping into our kingdom, exclaimed Grandmother sorrowfully. I know that your father has promised you girls that you may visit the human world once you are 18 years old, but mind you, be very, very careful. And for God's sake, do not, I repeat, do not make friends with any human when you're there. Oceana, however, couldn't stop dreaming of the day when she would be free to visit the human world. I can't wait for my 18th birthday, she thought to herself, when I will finally be able to swim ashore all on my own and experience the enchanting magic of the mysterious human world. And so, the days and years passed as though in a dream, till finally it was her 18th birthday. And as her father, the king, wished her a happy birthday and asked her what present she wanted, there was Oceana's chance. Father, I have waited for this day for so long, she said, and as you had promised me, And as my sisters got the chance to visit the human kingdom, today is my turn. Please give me a blessing and I'll be on my way." Now Oceana was the king's favorite daughter, and she was the youngest. Her father was not very happy to let her go all on her own into the unknown human world. But a promise was a promise, and so he gave her his blessing and bid her a happy adventure, with the only condition that Scuttle the crab would keep a close eye on her, only to ensure that she was safe at all times. That was it. She kissed everyone goodbye, Grandma and her 4 sisters and friends, and whoosh, she swam, with Scuttle close behind her. "Wait for me," he called out to her several times. But there was no stopping Oceana now. She was going ashore. "Human world, here I come!" she squealed with joy and excitement. It was a glorious morning. The sun had never looked brighter. The waves made gentle ripples around her, and she watched a flock of birds fly right past her towards a large, glimmering object. "A human ship," she thought, remembering the many wrecked ships that she had come across at the bottom of the sea over the years, and the little treasures from within them that she had collected, which were the main reason for her fascination with the human world in the first place. She swam as close as she could till she could almost touch the ship to have a better look. She was fascinated with the hustle and bustle happening inside, with the crew preparing for what looked like a grand party. Amid all the fun and frolic, her eyes were drawn to the center of the ship, at one human in particular. He was handsome and had the kindest eyes she had ever seen. As she swam and bobbed about on the surface of the water, observing everything and missing nothing, she kept swimming back close to the ship all through the day, enchanted by the ship and the activity inside it. Towards the evening, as she watched them sing and dance, a fierce storm began, and the ship started bobbing violently on the water. It tossed and turned, and amid the chaos, the handsome man was thrown overboard into the deep sea in his attempt to rescue the crew. Oceana wasted no time. She dived into the water, swam hurriedly towards him, and with all her might pulled him up and carried him ashore. As she placed him on land, she realized that he was unconscious. "Oh dear, what can I do?" she thought to herself. "I don't know how to help him. Oh God, please let him live," she hoped desperately. In her nervous helplessness, she began to sing, softly humming to the kind human, hoping that her melodious voice would give him the strength to open his eyes. And it did. In a few moments, he began to stir and slowly opened his eyes. Oceana was relieved and overjoyed, but she couldn't let him see her. She wasn't human after all. She quickly hid behind a rock, her heart pounding with a strange feeling. She watched as the guards from the royal palace came looking for him to take him home. They ran towards him, relieved that he was safe and alive. "Come along, Prince. We are here to take you home, where you may rest and feel better soon," they said to him. The prince got up and began looking around. Where is that angel with the enchanting voice? The prince asked. She saved my life. There is no one here, prince, the guards replied. We must get you back to the palace. The king and queen are worried about you. As they led him back to the palace, Oceana dived back into the sea. She suddenly realized that she had fallen in love with the prince. Back in her underwater palace, she couldn't stop thinking about him. Her sisters tried to cheer her up with interesting stories of underwater life, but all she could say was, "Oh, how I wish I could be human, to dance with the prince under the warm sun and be with him forever and ever." Part 2. In the Sea Kingdom, time went by as usual, days slipping into months, but not for Oceana. For her, time seemed to have stopped since the day she laid eyes on the handsome prince she had rescued. His image occupied her every thought, and neither her sisters, her friends, nor even her wise grandmother could distract her from him. Oceana's father, the Sea King, noticed his favorite daughter's sadness. He questioned Scuttle the crab, who had always watched over Oceana, and he told the king what had happened. The Sea King was deeply troubled, well aware of the dangers of loving someone from the upper world, as the sea folk called it. "That's enough," he declared, his voice booming through the underwater palace. "It's time to get all my daughters engaged to suitable mermen. They'll start families of their own and find happiness in our world, not entangle themselves in dangerous relationships with humans." And so, a grand party was to be held in a few days. Excitement buzzed through the Sea Kingdom as preparations began. Mermen from all corners of the ocean were invited, and the mermaids busied themselves with decorating and adorning their tails with brightly colored shells and corals. The day of the party arrived, and the king's castle was buzzing with activity. The finest sea flowers, the best food and music, and every luxurious detail was carefully arranged. The celebration was grand, and everyone danced, laughed, and frolicked in the water. Yet, Oceana's heart was not in it. She felt an emptiness that no amount of coaxing from her friends and sisters, nor invitations to dance from eager mermen could fill. Eventually, she slipped away from the lively festivities, preferring to be by herself in her little garden, her thoughts consumed by the prince. Sitting alone, she stared sorrowfully at her fishtail, longing desperately for human legs so she could walk on land and be with the prince. That's it, she finally decided, her heart pounding. I'll go to the sea witch and ask for her help. The sea witch was a notorious, horrible creature, dwelling in the darkest part of the ocean. Her reputation was one of evil and nastiness, with stories of her terrifying powers whispered among the sea folk. But Oceana had made up her mind. This was her last resort, and she was determined to do whatever it took to be with the prince. Setting off on the long, treacherous journey to the sea witch's castle, Oceana knew it wouldn't be easy. The path was bare and grey, with none of the vibrant sea life she was used to. The castle was surrounded by a twisted forest of polyps, creatures that were half animal, half plant, with slimy hands and fingers like wriggling worms. Oceana was terrified as she navigated through the strange, nightmarish landscape, the polyps reaching out as if to grab her. She nearly turned back, but thoughts of the prince, his kind eyes searching for her before the guards took him away, gave her the strength to push forward. Summoning her courage, she tied her long hair tightly around her head and crossed her arms over her chest and swam quickly through the water, avoiding the grasping polyps. Finally, she reached a clearing where the witch's house loomed before her, built from drowned human remains and the wreckage of sunken ships. "I know why you're here," the witch sneered, her teeth sharp as fangs. "And you're just in time, because after the sun rises tomorrow, you would have had to wait a whole 2 weeks before I could help you." Oceana's heart pounded as she listened. "You want to get rid of your fishtail and live on land, don't you, you foolish creature?" the witch cackled. Her gut-wrenching laughter echoed threateningly through the water. "I can make that happen. I'll brew a magic potion for you, and you'll need to drink it on land before sunrise. Your tail will turn into 2 beautiful legs, and you will be able to walk and live like the humans. But everything comes at a price. Did you think you'd get this for nothing?" Oceana's eyes widened with fear. "I'll take the most precious thing you have, your voice. That shall be mine. I'll have the most enchanting voice in the Sea Kingdom, and you can have your legs to live with your prince on land. But remember, there's a catch. You only have 3 days to win the prince's love. If he doesn't fall in love with you and marry you within those 3 days, you'll dissolve into the sea, gone forever, unable to return to your life even as a mermaid." Oceana was horrified by the witch's words. But how can I live without my voice?" she pleaded. "How can I talk to the prince? How can I talk to anyone?" "Through your enchanting eyes," the witch replied coldly. "Through your graceful movements, your captivating beauty. No one will match you in these. But your voice, that must be mine. Now decide, deal or no deal?" Oceana was silent, heartbroken by the choice before her. Yet she knew what her heart desired most of all, and she had come too far to turn back. "Deal," she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. "Speak up," the witch demanded, her voice harsh and mocking. "Use that beautiful voice one last time." "I'll take it," Oceana said, louder this time, though her heart was heavy with sorrow. "Very well," the witch hissed, handing her a flask filled with a clear liquid that smelled of the foulest, most awful ingredients. Drink this on land and be the enchantress you wish to be. But remember, if the prince does not fall in love with you in 3 days, you're finished. Oceana took the flask and hurried away from the witch's abode, terrified of the polyps that had tried to grab her before. But this time, they backed away from the foul-smelling potion she carried. As she swam toward the surface, she glanced back at her castle. Its lights dimmed as everyone slept. Her heart ached with grief. She had not only given up her mermaid tale, but also her voice, her family, her entire life, all for the chance to be with the prince. She swam to her garden one last time, plucked a flower from each of her sister's plots, blew 1,000 kisses towards the palace, and then rose through the dark blue sea. Once on land, she drank the potion, choking on its disgusting taste. As she lay there, recovering from the potion's effects, she felt a burning pain as her tail began to shrink, transforming into a pair of beautiful human legs. At that very moment, the prince, who happened to be looking out of his window, saw her lying there. He rushed to her side, his heart racing as he thought, "This must be the one who saved me." When the sun rose over the sea, Oceana awoke to find the prince gazing at her with deep, dark eyes. He asked her questions, but she could only look at him, unable to speak. Concerned for her well-being, the prince took her to his palace. "We'll take care of you," he assured her gently. "I'm certain that you're the one who saved my life." Once dressed in fine silk and given a hot meal, the color returned to Oceana's cheeks. The king and queen welcomed her warmly, but still she did not speak. "Let's give her some time," they all said. "She must have gone through something terrible," they concluded. Despite her silence, Oceana's eyes expressed a lot, and her graceful presence won everyone's hearts. She became the prince's close companion, and they communicated a great deal without words. He called her his little friend, holding her with great affection, but he did not see her as his queen. They spent the entire day together, riding, hunting, and fishing. In the water, the prince told her tales of sea life, which Oceana knew well, but listened to with a smile, cherishing every moment with him. Yet, despite these joyful times, Oceana felt an emptiness, unable to make the prince fall in love with her. On the second day after Oceana's arrival, the prince announced that he would be visiting a neighboring kingdom to meet a princess, whom his parents had arranged for him to marry. He asked Oceana to accompany him, and she reluctantly agreed. The princess was renowned for her beauty across all neighboring kingdoms, and when she finally appeared, everyone, including Oceana and the prince, was amazed and awestruck. As she spoke in her soft and gentle tone, something in her voice made the prince's heart flutter, and he was sure that it was she who had saved him from drowning. He proposed to her right away, and she accepted. And so it was settled. The prince and princess were going to be married soon, and everyone in the palace was celebrating. Oceana's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. Would the prince for whom she had sacrificed so much never be hers? What else could she do to win his love? Part 3. In the prince's royal residence, preparations for his wedding began, and the palace buzzed with excitement. The prince, his heart filled with joy, held Oceana's hands in his and said, "Thank you, my little friend, for bringing me so much good fortune. You can stay here with my parents as their own daughter, companion, whatever you wish. That way, we can see each other often." Oceana was heartbroken. In just a few hours, the love of her life, for whom she had sacrificed everything, was marrying a beautiful princess. And she, on the other hand, would dissolve into the sea, her existence erased forever. Yet, she had to appear joyful for the human she loved so deeply. One final sacrifice, she thought, trying to console herself, because true love meant letting go, didn't it? At least, that was what she had always heard. On the wedding day, amidst the grand celebrations, Oceana knew that these were her last moments as a human. She put on a brave face, joining in the festivities. She smiled, mingled, and danced, her movements so graceful, so enchanting, that even the bride and her family couldn't help but admire her. The prince too felt proud, his little friend sharing in this joyous occasion. As the ceremony progressed, with the prince and princess about to tie the knot and say their marriage vows, Oceana could bear it no longer. She slipped away, unnoticed, preparing to meet her fate. She cast one final lingering look at the prince, who was so happy. She silently thanked the king and queen for their kindness and hospitality, tears welling up in her eyes as she left. She sat by the shore, ready to plunge into the sea, silently crying her last cry for all that she had lost and was about to lose. As she gazed at the water, ready to take the plunge and dissolve into the sea as the witch had prophesied, she was startled to see her sisters swimming toward her. "Oh, my sisters!" she thought, overwhelmed with a mix of joy, relief, and sorrow. "Oh, Oceana!" they cried out to her, embracing her tightly. "We searched everywhere for you. How could you not trust us with what you were doing? How could you leave us like that?" they scolded her gently. "Do you have any idea how father and grandmother felt when you left? They've been heartbroken. And what about Scuttle, your trusted friend? You didn't think of telling him either? How could you be so selfish? But never mind that now. We've come to help you. We spent every moment searching for a way to break the witch's spell and get your voice back. And we found something. Something that we think will not only save your life, but it might also help you realize your dream. Every full moon, her powers weaken. She becomes as helpless as a mouse. All her evil, dark magic, her wicked spells, become powerless. Oceana, tonight is a full moon. Please try to use your voice. Just try and say something. We think it'll work. The moon is on our side, Oceana. You might be able to get your voice back. Please just say something. Please just try. A glimmer of hope sparked in Oceana. She remembered the witch's words. You're just in time, because after the sun rises tomorrow, you would have had to wait a whole 2 weeks before I could help you. Perhaps this was what she had meant. Taking a deep breath, Oceana tried to hum. At first, the sound was so faint, it was almost lost to the wind. But then it grew louder, clearer, until they all realized that it worked. The spell had been broken. Oceana could hum again, and with it she could speak, laugh, and cry with her sisters once more. Overcome with joy, she leapt to her feet and danced with her sisters, humming and singing with all her heart. Back at the palace, the festivities were on in full swing. The bride and groom were just about to take their vows, sealing their fate in matrimony. As everyone in the ceremony sat in silence with bated breath, the prince suddenly heard it. The soft, gentle hum that had once saved his life. It was the voice he had longed to hear again, the voice he believed belonged to his bride. But it was coming from the shore, not from within the palace. His heart racing, he moved away from the ceremony and followed the sound. He had finally found the one who had saved him, the one he truly loved, and this time he would not let her slip away. When he reached the shore, he saw her, his little friend, dancing and humming by the sea, her voice the same beautiful melody that had haunted his dreams. Why didn't you tell me sooner, my sweetheart? Why didn't you say anything? He exclaimed, taking her into his arms. As they walked back to the palace, she explained everything to him. Her deep, unwavering love for him that had begun the moment she set eyes on him on the ship. How she had hidden behind a rock as the guards had come to take him away. How she had longed to see him after that, and all she had almost lost just to be with him. This time, the prince was speechless, overwhelmed by Oceana's unmatched love for him. As he looked at her in that moment, seeing her in a new light, no longer as just his little friend, he recognized a deep connection between them, the blossoming of new love that would remain unshakable forever. She then asked him, "What will you tell your bride?" "I can't marry anyone else," he replied. "I'll tell her the truth." But as they entered the palace, they found nothing but the dry, lifeless skin of a hideous, horrible-looking sea creature with octopus-like arms and monstrous features, lying where the bride should have been. A chilling cry echoed through the air and then faded into silence. It was then that Oceana realized the truth. The bride was none other than the witch all along, and with the spell broken, the witch had been defeated, leaving nothing but a hollow shell behind. The dark clouds that had once loomed over Oceana's and the prince's fate, over the entire sea kingdom, vanished, restoring light, love, and joy to everyone's lives. Oceana's heart swelled with relief and joy as she embraced the prince, her dream finally coming true. with the love of her life by her side. The prince too held her close, realizing how close he had come to losing her forever. The palace erupted in celebration once more, this time for the union of the prince and his true bride. Oceana was welcomed as the future queen, and the kingdom rejoiced in the end of the witch's reign of terror. The sea creatures, hearing the news, joined the festivities, singing and dancing in the waters near the shore. As the night went on, Oceana and the prince stood hand in hand, watching the stars above. The prince turned to her and said, "You were always in my heart, Oceana. Even when I didn't know it, it was you who I was searching for." Oceana smiled, her heart finally at peace. "And I would endure it all again just to be here with you," she whispered. They stood holding each other under the night sky, the moon quietly witnessing their eternal union, sealing their bond forever. Thank you for joining us on this enchanting journey through the Little Mermaid's adventures. We hope you enjoyed listening to this story as much as we loved bringing it to life for you. If you did, please consider liking this video, sharing it with family and friends, and subscribing to the Listener's Nest for more captivating content. This story is written by Hans Christian Andersen and adapted by the Listener's Nest. It was read by Zia Contract.